All right, let me start off with a question today for all of us. Welcome online to this question's for you as well. Have you ever been given something or started something, but then quickly realized that you were ill-equipped to do what you needed to do with what was given or what you started to do? And because of that, you felt overwhelmed. You looked at what was in your hands, your experiences, your finances, your future, and you just didn't see how in the world you were going to succeed. Parenting's definitely one of those things. For me, for sure, we went parenting a little different direction than most of you. We went the adoption route. All right, so instead of building our family through having children of our own, we went to adopt. And instead of delivery rooms, we went to Taiwan. And we brought our son Chase home at 8 months old. And then a year later, we brought our son Jackson home at 6 months old. Our labor pains looked a lot different than most as well. Ours looked like tedious government red tape and paperwork and a lot of jet lag. So when we arrived in Taiwan the first time to become parents, the orphanage, they had some strict rules that they didn't want to make sure that if you had flown overseas and were experiencing jet lag, they did not want moms and dads to taking their child to the apartment, to the hotel room, feeling all that just messed up with the brain and lack of sleep. They wanted you to get a couple nights of good rest under you. Then you could take your child back to the apartment, back to the hotel room. And so that's what happened for us. We were finally able one day to bring Chase back to our little apartment there, and we fed him, we gave him a bath, we played with him, and then it was time for bed. So we put him in his little crib that was right there at the foot of our bed. And this was probably the most peaceful night of sleep that Chase had ever known at that point, because there were like 18 other babies in that orphanage. So there was someone always crying. But here was just peace and quiet. So Chase fell asleep super fast. And so Janie and I got into bed, and I remember laying there in the dark and just hearing the sounds of this baby breathing. And it freaked me out. And I literally had the thought in my head, and I'm a little embarrassed to say this, a little convicting to say this, I had the thought, what have we done? Because reality hit. Life has changed. And what were these people thinking? Allowing me to be responsible for the life of this amazing thing at the foot of my bed? I don't have a handbook how to do this. I felt completely overwhelmed. Some of you, maybe it wasn't parenting, maybe it's marriage. And you love him, and you love, and she loves him, and you bring in when you find out quickly in marriage that this other person is bringing in like this whole other way of doing things. You also baggage maybe from their families that kind of took you by surprise, and you're going, I don't know how to manage this. Or maybe for those of you who started a business, you're an entrepreneur, or you maybe started an organization, and you are so excited about this thing that has to be birthed into the world. And then when it finally happens, then you realize, oh, there's a lot of other competition I didn't realize out there. Or the economy took a turn for the worse. And there's all these other complexities that are deeper than you thought. And you feel overwhelmed. Well, today I want to look at an encounter with Jesus that's mentioned in all 4 gospel accounts in the Bible for those moments when maybe you're feeling overwhelmed, when what is in your hands is insufficient for what you are facing. And this is definitely true in our personal lives, but it is especially true in our spiritual lives. And you go, well, here's a challenge. Here is a path that is set before me. This is something I believe God wants me to do, but I don't know if I can do it with what I have in my hands. And that's a problem. And this event is going to address when you feel overwhelmed, whether it's because something has come at you or whether you feel overwhelmed because there's a challenge in front of you that God wants you to do. So I want you to visualize the setting for a moment. We're talking about this place that is on the north shore of the Lake of Galilee. There's a mountainside there. And so it's kind of this beautiful vista where you're up on this mountaintop and you're overseeing this lake. And then we're going to start off in Luke's account, but we're also going to jump back and forth between John and Luke in the New Testament. Luke starts off in Luke 9, verse 10, when the apostles returned. They reported to Jesus what they had done. And then he took them with him, and they withdrew by themselves to a town called Bethsaida. But the crowds learned about it and followed him. And Jesus welcomed them and spoke to them about the kingdom of God and healed those who needed healing. But late in the afternoon, the 12 came to Jesus and said, "Send the crowd away so that they can go to the surrounding villages and countryside and find food and lodging because we are in a remote place here." Now, I want a quick moment to point something out here, that these people came to Jesus. Did you see why they came? They came for a couple things. They came for teaching, and they came for healing. And this is not unusual, right? This is actually, through the Gospels, it's almost like every chapter. It's like Jesus is out here, the crowds find their way, and they want to be taught, and they want healing. And that's what Jesus does. Nothing is out of the ordinary here. But this time, I think this is the why it's in all four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, is they're like, this one was really different. Because Jesus is about to do something that is completely new and that nobody was expecting. So here's how the Gospel of John says it from here in chapter 6. It says, when Jesus looked up and saw the great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test Philip, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. And Philip answered him, "Jesus, what are you talking about? It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for all of these people to have a single bite of bread." Now Philip doesn't get a lot of love in the Gospels, does he? You read through, you're like, who's Philip? Right? You think about the disciples of Jesus, the 12 apostles, you go, Peter, right? James, John, they always get the spotlight on them. Philip, you're like, who's this guy and who invited him? Who is this guy? And I think Jesus singles out Philip for a couple of reasons. I don't know this for sure, but here's my theory. One is this, that Philip was actually from this area. He is from the town of Bethsaida. It's his hometown. So I think what's happening here is Jesus is going, hey, these people are hungry, Philip. You're from around here. What's good? You know, who's got the best bread that we could like DoorDash from here? And there's another reason, though, I think that Jesus singles out Philip. Because did you know that Philip was the very first disciple? That Jesus sought out Philip first and said, "Follow me." John 1, starting in verse 43, tells us about that moment. It says, the next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee, where he found Philip. And Jesus said to him, "Come and follow me." Now, Philip, Andrew, and Peter had all grown up together in the village of Bethsaida. Philip went to look for his friend Nathanael and told him, "We have found him. We have found the one we've been waiting for. It's Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth. He is the one Moses and the prophets prophesied would come." And Nathanael sneered, "Nazareth? What good thing could come from Nazareth?" And Philip answered, "Come, let's find out." Now, the very first thing that Philip does when he decides to follow Jesus is he went and got someone else so that they could come meet Jesus as well. Now, those of you who've been around Discovery for even like a few months, you're like, I know 100% what Matt's about to say. And let me find out. And those of you who are new, you're like, you're going to find out. All right? You're just surprised, no shock. You're going to find out. What am I about to say? Nathaniel was Philip's what? Yeah, it was his 100%. And I love that you know that so much right now because Nathaniel was Philip's 1. Nathaniel was someone who was far from Jesus, but close to Philip. Philip understood right away that the amazing news of Jesus had to be shared with those who he loved the most. I think that's why Jesus chose Philip first. He's like, because I know your heart. You're going to go after Nathaniel. And I want every other disciple who follows me to follow your lead. So the question is for you is who's your one? Who is the person that comes to mind who is right now far from God, but close to you? That God has put on your heart, that you love, that you are friends, your family, you live close together, there's proximity, you're hanging out together, you're like, you've got to know the difference that Jesus has made in my life, because it is our responsibility to share, to pray for, to invite, so that they can come to know the difference that God is making in your life and wants to do in their life and in their eternity. And I want you to know 2 of the best opportunities to do this are right around the corner, everybody. One is just in a couple weeks, actually less than 2 weeks away right now is our Good Friday experience. This is something that we've just started to do last year. It's a 30-minute walkthrough where you can register online for a time slot because it goes from like 5 to 8:30 on both of these nights. So you need to register for a 30-minute time slot. And then you walk through the different stages of Jesus' life right up to his cross, kind of like the last 24 hours or so of his life. And it's a great way to prepare you for Easter weekend, Resurrection Sunday. And what I want to encourage you to do is to think about your one, is to invite them to come with you. And here's what I would do, is I would sign up for your time slot, go to time slot, go to your walkthrough, and then go to dinner together, and then talk about it. Like, what did you experience? What did you see? What did you think? Or vice versa. Go to dinner, and then go to the walkthrough. It's a great opportunity, and that'll tee you up well for the next thing, which is right after that, our Easter weekend, our Resurrection Sunday weekend, and we're having 3 services this year. Our first time ever on Saturday evening, one at 5:00 on Saturday. And then also our usual 2 on Sunday mornings, 9 and 10:30. And this is a season. Todd said this last week when he was up here doing his announcements and things like that, and it's 100% true, that your invite is going to be especially powerful because people who don't usually look at going to church are looking for a place to go. So it takes the invitation that is in your hands and it amplifies it. So use it. So how did Philip respond to Jesus when he kind of shocked him with these words like, where should we feed these people at, Philip? Philip responds with math. He quickly goes to this calculation. He calculates the cost and he determines that we don't have enough money to do what you're asking, Jesus. And it would take half a year's salary to give every single person a bite, and that's not going to fill up their hunger. And here's how Jesus responds to Philip's calculations. In Luke 9, he says, you give them something to eat. And I don't think he's just talking to Philip. I think he's talking to the 12. He's talking to the 12 disciples. Hey, you guys, feed them. And now they're really feeling overwhelmed. Like, what? You're putting this on us? We just said there's not enough money. We jump over to John 6. It says, another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish, but how far will this go among so many? Philip and Andrew do the math, and the equation, I think, looks a little bit like this. 5 loaves plus 2 fish divided by 5,000, and by the way, that 5,000 is just the men, all right? They didn't count the women and the children in those days. They're counting households, 5,000 families. So we're talking probably more like 15,000 to be generous. 5 plus 2 divided by 5,000 equals, Jesus, not enough. Now, with whatever you feel overwhelmed with, in your spiritual life or in your personal life, and you're like, I don't know if I can do this, we might say that equation a little differently. We might say, what's in my hands plus what's in front of me equals not enough. I can't do it. And Jesus hears this, and he's about to insert himself into the equation, which is going to change everything. John says it this way. Jesus said, all right, have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Verse 11, Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. And he did the same thing with the fish. And I want you to understand that the miracle here doesn't happen because of what you have in your hand. The miracle happens by what you hand over to Jesus. And Jesus, by testing Philip, is inviting him into the miracle. He is inviting you and me into this miracle if you will just hand over what you have. He says, I can't do the miracle if it's resting, if you are holding on to it in your own hands. You got to hand it over to me if you want me to do something extraordinary with it. And I got to be honest, for you and for me, this is convicting because I wonder how many miracles I've missed out on. How many adventures that God has invited me to be a part of, and I've missed it because I was so concerned about what was in my hands instead of who had my back. It says, when they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, all right, gather the pieces that are now left over. Leftovers? We started with a boy's Lunchable, and now we're talking about leftovers? He says, let nothing be wasted. So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. It's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful miracle. But the formula that you and I have lived by, we've used, again, this one, 5 plus 2 divided by 5,000 equals not enough. But when you put Christ in the equation, it goes from 5 plus 2 plus Jesus equals more than enough. Equals more than enough. And I love this story. I think it's incredible, this event that's taken place that was so important to the disciples. They're like, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, you all need to put this in your account. And they did. But I think that God is doing these things today as well. This looks sometimes a little different. But as the pastor of this church, I get to know a lot of your stories. And it's exciting, and it's an honor to get to know some of your stories, what God is doing in your lives. And I want to get a chance for you to hear a story that is happening at this moment with one of our people. So I want you to do me a favor. Welcome our friend Greg to the stage right now. Let's go. This is Greg the Keener. And Brittany just got up and made me a little nervous for a moment. You'll know why. But Greg, would you do me a favor? There's some people here in the room probably have not had the honor to get to know you yet. Yeah. Would you just introduce yourself to the online people and also to the people here?
Absolutely. Great to be in front of you all. My name's Greg Keener. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Brittany. We have a little girl, Kennedy, a dog named Piglet, and we have another one that is imminently awaiting its arrival. So
thank you for not having him or her. And you're actually due on Easter, right?
We are due on Easter.
Nice.
Hopefully sooner.
Awesome. All right. Well, after let's see, 11:30, you're good to go.
Good to go.
All right, perfect. You have my blessing. So tell us like a little bit, like you're from this area.
Yes. So
And
yeah, grew up in Seven Fields. Our family moved here in September of '95. I graduated from Seneca Valley. Went to culinary school. Lived in New York. Lived in D.C. and then moved back to the area in 2017.
all right. Fantastic. So what, for a lot of us, we graduate high school, go off to college, pick up a trade. What was that for you?
Well, after high school, let's say I had a tumultuous teenage couple of years, and college was not in the cards for me.
Okay.
Immediately following graduation, which I graduated by the skin on my teeth, and I ended up working in a restaurant called Houlihan's, which is recently closed. But that's where I cut my teeth in restaurants. At the time, it was a fully scratch kitchen. I worked there, I think I started there when I was 17, and then when I was 21, I decided to go to culinary school. I had a chef that was there. I was taking part-time classes at Butler County Community College, and I really did not like it. I had finished one of my midterms or finals and came into work, and he kind of just, looked at me and he's like, "What do you want to do with life?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm gonna figure it out." It's like, "Have you ever thought about going to culinary school?" And it was not something that had ever crossed my mind. It was not something that was on the list of, acceptable jobs. In my mind, it was a bachelor's degree. It was a 4-year, and I had never thought about culinary school. So I went home that night and put in some applications, and I found Culinary Institute of America, which is in upstate New York in Poughkeepsie, about 30 miles north of New York City. And that was the only application that I submitted. I was like, it's either this or nothing. And just a couple weeks later, I got a acceptance letter. I let my parents know at that point. My mother is here, so she'll appreciate that because she had no clue until I was accepted. And then the rest is history.
Okay, so you're at culinary school now in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Yep.
And tell me about that time.
So it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. I found a school environment that I thrived in. Classes were 3 weeks long, about 5 days a week, 10-hour days. They were very intensive and focused, and there wasn't a lot of paperwork tests. It was a lot of practical, and I absolutely loved it. Made a couple great friends along the way. As you can see up in this picture, these are guys that I still talk to this day. Yes, I have hair.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know, since
You're on your way then,
since
too.
fatherhood, I've lost it. I was on my way. You can see it. But the guy in the blue chef coat there, his name's Kwame. Has become very close, great friend of mine. He was running a catering company. He comes from a not as well-to-do background, and he was running a catering company to pay his way through school. I was on a scholarship. My parents were helping me pay for school, so it was a great thing for me to do and get additional experience. And so him and I, we did catering events every other weekend, and formed a great relationship.
Cool. And so you're wrapping up culinary school, and what's next? You got a job. I mean, Taco Bell's hiring, I understand. And
Yeah,
what else?
yeah.
What else is happening?
So Kwame was the student governor president for our class, and he had been working an event where a chef named Daniel Hume was attending. He was the chef at a restaurant called 11 Madison Park, and Kwame and him got to talking, and Daniel offered him a job whenever he graduated. And I was 3 weeks away from graduation. I had no jobs lined up. I had no plans on where I was going, what I was doing. And Kwame and I, were like, "Oh, it'd be cool to live together in New York." And he's like, "Oh, let me see if I can get you a job." And fast forward a couple days, I got an email to come in for an interview at this restaurant. And I got the job, and I started, I think, the day after I graduated.
Okay. So you said 11 Madison Park, and that's not like that's a step up from like Permane Brothers around here, I think.
Yeah,
a little bit.
one or two.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that restaurant and your experience, what you learned in that time.
So 11 Madison Park is a 3 Michelin star Relais and Chateau property. There are no Michelin stars in the state of Pennsylvania. There are less than 20 3 Michelin star restaurants in the country. It is a restaurant that prides itself on excellence through and through. Hospitality was the main ingredient in this restaurant. Will Gadara was the general manager. Wrote a book called Unreasonable Hospitality. One of the things that he used to say on a regular basis was you can put the right plate in front of the right person at the right table, but how you make somebody feel when you do that is hospitality.
I love that.
And
that's good.
That emulates throughout my time that I spent there. You had referenced the bear
Yes.
In the episode The Forks. So during the first service,
Season 2, episode 7.
I watched a little recap of that in between services, and the level of attention to detail and the discipline that was exuded in that episode is very similar to what I experienced.
Well, that episode's inspired by that book and by the 11 Madison Park. It was inspired by that place.
You would not receive a fork on your table that had a watermark or a smear or a glass with a thumbprint. The level of attention to detail was unmatched.
And you're saying this is a place, you said at first service, 18 courses.
18
courses. 3.5 hour dining experience.
3.5 hour dining experience.
For $19.99.
For what is currently $355 a person.
Okay.
The average check when I was there was $1,200 for two people.
Okay.
It was a menu that was curated. There was a whole team of chefs that their job was only for 80 hours a week developing the next menu for the next season. The level of attention and care and detail to every single moment that someone had while in that restaurant was meticulously cared for and thought through.
There's a story in that episode of The Bear actually kind of takes it and does it in a different way because in Chicago with deep dish pizza and not in New York City, that really kind of launched even further 11 Madison Park's knowledge or understanding of hospitality. Can you tell that story a little bit?
Absolutely. So, hot dog cart that was came out of the kitchen at 11 Madison Park. They did it for an art festival, and it was supposed to just be a 2-day thing where they were serving, fine dining hot dogs, and it turned into a full-time hot dog stand that had lines wrapped around Madison Square Park that eventually turned into a full-time stand in Madison Square Park where they added burgers and French fries, and that has grown to become what you all probably now know as Shake Shack. And the inspiration of the hot dog in New York truly is, something that if you've ever been to New York City, there's a hot dog cart on every other block.
Yeah. The Dirty Water Dogs.
The Dirty Water Dogs. And the Dirty Water Dogs made their way into service at 11 Madison Park. I would not say frequently, but it definitely had its place. There was a job role called the Dreamweaver. There were 3 of them on any given shift, and their job was to take that next level of hospitality. It would happen, somebody would happen to mention it while somebody was serving their table, we've been in New York for 2 days, but we didn't get our chance to get the Dirty Water Dog. And then they would unexpectedly be served at a point where it made sense in the meal, but they would be served a high-level Dirty Water hot dog with a house-made grain mustard and house-made sauerkraut, just perfect little one bite. And that's only one example
Yeah.
of things.
The book said the people who had received that hot dog were like, that was the star of the meal. They walked out and that's the first thing they told people about their dining experiences. All these places in New York, this place did this.
There's another one that came to mind while I was, in between services. There was a gentleman who had called in. He was dining with his father. Had called in before the meal to be like, hey, my dad is sort of like a Budweiser meat and potatoes kind of guy. I don't know how he's going to react to this. And so in the level of unreasonable hospitality, we had a champagne cart that we would roll up to the table for all of the guests to offer a really expensive glass of champagne to start their meal. But for this table, the Dreamweavers went out to a number of bodegas in the surrounding neighborhoods, and they got every glass bottle of Budweiser, different labels that they could find, and they filled up this guy's champagne cart with Budweiser and rolled it up to the table for him.
Phenomenal.
And I will never forget that guy walking out. He had the best time. And he was not somebody who would have normally been accustomed to these, 18-course tasting menus. It was really, really special.
So, this is the culture you got to cut your teeth in.
Yeah.
And what an awesome opportunity this was for you. And as I was preparing this message and why I invited you on stage today, as I was reading about Jesus feeding these 15,000 people, nobody came to Jesus that day expecting him to feed them. Yeah. They came for healing and teaching. And yet Jesus is going, wait till I blow their minds. I'm going to even take away their hunger in this moment. I'm going to take care of every one of their needs today. Now, where were you with Jesus during that time when you were working at?
Yeah, at that time, I would use the word jaded. I grew up attending Perry Highway Lutheran Church in Wexford. I have always had the Holy Spirit living within me. I've always had that presence. But through a number of experiences, when my family left that church, the way that our family was received, I dated a girl who was Roman Catholic that left me feeling sort of, jaded, and I was far from the church at this point. But hospitality and, how you treat other people is something that, my mother, I'll give her the nod since she's here, has always exuded, and that's something that's always existed within me. So this pursuit of unreasonable hospitality was something that always sat with me, and it was easy for me to kind of pick up on.
Tim grabbed me in the lobby. He was like, Greg didn't tell you. The first few times he came to Discovery when we were at the other building, right, the RLA, and he was like, he would just sit in the lobby. He would not go into the services because he was so jaded. Yeah, that's where you were. That's not where you are now. But I want to go back to Kwame. Yeah, so where you're no longer really, you kind of moved away.
Yes.
You're back in Pittsburgh now, and where are things at now with your friend Kwame?
Yeah, so Kwame and I, we'll rewind it just a quick bit. We both worked at 11 Madison Park together. We lived together in New York. We conceptualized a restaurant while we were together in New York, and you can ask me about it later. We got, at 25 years old, we had a couple of guys offer us a basic blank check to open up a restaurant in DC. We moved to DC, we did that, and it was very quickly shuttered. A book that I recommend to anybody to read is Notes from a Young Black Chef. This is a book that...
Say it again, I want to make people to hear this.
Notes from a Young Black Chef.
It's on Audible,
Yep.
It's a quick read.
It's a great read. Yeah. We were in the process of writing that book. It was sort of an autobiography about Kwame's life, and then the restaurant was closed, and that makes it into the book. And at that point, Brittany and I moved back to Pittsburgh. I took a job as a GM for a restaurant downtown, and then took a job working for a restaurant point-of-sale system. And fast forward to today, in February, I rejoined Kwame, who has not taken his foot off the gas since that restaurant closed. Currently now, if you want to pull that graphic up for me, Scott, Currently, Tatiana, the hat that I'm wearing right now, one of the top restaurants in New York City. It's been on the top 10 list for the last 3 years. The restaurant in D.C. that opened in September that Esquire named Best New Restaurant in America. We are opening a restaurant in Miami in June, opening one in Las Vegas at the end of the year. Got a golf course with a country club coming next year and a restaurant in L.A. And so I took the job of the director of service and hospitality.
That's pretty incredible. And, you told me the title, and it was like, that's like Jesus' title. Like, he's the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, and Director of Service and Hospitality.
I really got something to live up to.
You're 100%. So, Greg, first of all, this is such a cool moment, and you're not going anywhere. That's another good thing. You're not moving to LA. You're not moving to Vegas. You're getting to raise Kennedy and Penelope or whatever. I don't know why I always say Penelope. That's a good name. You get to be here, and you serve you lead our cafe team here. And how many Michelin stars does our cafe have?
So I made this joke earlier. I would say that our cafe is a bib gourmand, which is like an honorable mention.
Okay, fantastic.
We don't quite make it into the 1, 2, 3 Michelin star category.
Well, give it a year. So you've been on quite the journey, and your story is so cool. But what would you and Brittany, will you share, to anybody who's in this room, who's listening to your story online, what would you want them to know about God?
Yeah. I would just say trust. Trust in God. Brittany and I took a financial class with Mark Stahl-Smith about 3 years ago.
Here at Discovery, right?
Here at Discovery. We took that class. It was us and the Legates. We're the only two people that took this class, and so we got a lot of undivided attention and focus. And this was at a time where I was still, practicing my reps of getting back into things. And we took a leap of faith. At that point, we were not making a lot of money between the two of us. Brittany was working for a nonprofit as an attorney, making pennies on the dollar for the work that she was doing. And we were we were living paycheck to paycheck-ish. And so giving 10% was quite a leap of faith for us. And as soon as we did that, it was like one domino after another of things, that were becoming fruitful in our life. I'll never forget a raise that Brittany got that was, almost, to the dollar in the amount of what it was going to cost for us to send Kennedy to private school, to go to Eden. And then this job fell on my lap. And now we're in a place of abundance and looking for other ways to continue to give back.
I remember when you and Brittany told me the story, the highlights in the lobby a few months ago, and just said, it's like God said, if you're faithful with the little that God puts in your hands, he blesses you with more. And you're living that out, man. It's good. Hey, would you guys give Greg an applause for telling his story? Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you, buddy. So just to put a bow on this whole thing, I love what Greg said earlier. He said that this is a line he shared this. He said, the service is in black and white. Service is black and white. Hospitality is full color. And that should preach as followers of Jesus. When you think about your ones, when you think about the people in our neighborhoods, as people who bring the hands and feet of Christ to others, are we simply just serving people? Or are we even doing that? Are we even doing that in black and white? But Jesus calls us to serve in hospitality, to bring it in full color, to show who he is through us. So what's in your hands? What has God put in your hands? What is before you? And maybe it's in parenting, maybe it's in your marriage, maybe it's in giving, maybe it's in some challenge that you're facing, and God, you're looking at your hands going, I don't think I can do it. And you're right. But when you put it in the hands of God, he can do something miraculous in it. He's asking you to trust him, Go on that journey and just see if God isn't going to change everything in your life. That's what he wants to do. I'm going to ask our communion team to go to the back. And this is a time every Sunday that we take a moment. We're going to put two things in our hands, a piece of bread and a cup of juice. And I like the fact that we're talking about meals, and we're about to have a meal that Jesus started. And he said, this bread is my body that's about to be broken for you. And this juice is my blood that is going to be shed for you. Because he took your sin and my sin, everything past, present, future, and he put it on himself, and he died with our sin, saying, I'm going to take the punishment that was rightfully meant for you, and I'm going to take it. That's generosity right there, lived out. So as you take communion today, and you reflect and remember what Jesus has done for you, think about what God is calling you to do for him. Let's pass the communion at this time, and let's go to God at this time.